And I sat in the closet and cried.
But you said I was a narcissist.
Nick and Danielle are arguably the most toxic couple that have ever been on Love is Blind. But was it toxic or was one of them being abused? Season 2 of Love is Blind was met with great anticipation. After the first season, a couple like Lauren and Cameron had everyone really excited to see who could possibly be next. I personally never understood Nick and Danielle. I didn't get why they got together. I didn't really see their connection. I also personally found them both so extremely annoying. So it made sense why they chose each other to me.
Girl, the shade of it all.
They seemed like complete polar opposites, but they do say that opposites attract, so I guess that applied here. I didn't see them having a lasting, healthy, or fulfilling relationship, let alone a marriage. Once they got together in person, it both seemed like they were trying to change who they were or how they spoke about things to please the other person, to appease the other person. They were trying to be careful to not upset one another, just trying to keep the other person happy at all costs. And this is no way to live in life in general, but especially in a romantic relationship for the rest of your life. They were always fighting about something. They never seemed to be on the same page, and I couldn't remember any moments that they were genuinely happy. For me, they were the toxic couple of this season. I don't think that either of them were perfect or an ideal partner for one another. When rewatching the season, I wasn't convinced that it was just a toxic couple. It more so seemed like a lot of emotional manipulation and potentially abuse was going on. I say potentially abuse because continual emotional manipulation can become emotional abuse, and Danielle laid the foundation for her to be able to emotionally manipulate Nick literally from the beginning. So according to healthline.com, which is a website that posts articles written by medical professionals, they're also reviewed by doctors as well. So emotional abuse involves attempts to frighten, control, or isolate you. Overall, emotional abuse is characterized by a person's words, actions, and consistency of behaviors. Abuse may start gradually, but it happens over and over, so it's a continual process. The abuser may use different tactics to undermine your self-esteem, like name-calling, derogatory nicknames, and ignoring your requests to stop doing things that hurt them or make them feel emotionally unsafe or uncomfortable. It could be blatant insults or terms of endearments that highlight things that you are sensitive about. It could be character assassination, yelling, screaming, swearing, or intimidation. They may be extremely patronizing to the point where they say things to intentionally demean and belittle you. It may just be in the form of public embarrassment, in which they will pick fights, they will make fun of you and your shortcomings. They may be overall very dismissive about things that you care about. They roll their eyes, they smirk, they shake their head or sigh to let you know that they don't really care about what you have to say. There may be inappropriate jokes or insults disguised as jokes. There may be insults given about your appearance, belittling your accomplishments, putting down your interests, intentionally pushing your buttons, or putting you down or making you uncomfortable. All abusive behavior is done to maintain power and maintain control in the relationship. They may monitor your whereabouts, they may spy on you on or offline, they take control in making all of the decisions, they don't let you decide anything, they may use emotional blackmail, they may give you direct orders all of the time telling you what to do, there may be some form of constant lecturing or frequent emotional outbursts. They may try to accuse you of harming them, they may blame you for their relationship problems, or they may deny any part that they may have played in causing you harm, making you feel like you are the problem. So as we head into talking about the overall timeline of toxicity within their relationship that was displayed on the show, keep those things in mind and try to decipher for yourself whether what's going on is emotional abuse or just simply toxic behavior. And so in episode 1, we are introduced to Nick and Danielle. Nick is 35, Danielle is 28. And when they meet, the first thing Nick asks her is, what is her ideal Sunday fun day? Which I thought was pretty cringe, but...
What's a Sunday fun day to you?
I like being active. I like a bottomless brunch.
Nick then agrees and he's like, yeah, same thing. Right off the bat, it makes it seem like they have things in common. They have similar interests. But a couple minutes later in this episode, Nick told a different girl that he likes to do yoga and just hang out with his friends and be more low-key. So this is kind of the opposite of what Danielle likes to do and how she likes to spend her time.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
So right off the bat, that was like a little red flag to me. Danielle, she immediately talks about her insecurities. And this is something that would continue to come up a lot. And this is kind of what I saw as her laying the foundation for emotional manipulation that would continue on throughout the season.
I'm scared that every other date that you have is going to go better than ours.
I just want to make it very clear. I do not see absolutely anything wrong with being insecure and being open about your insecurities, especially to a potential partner. But I do think that there is something wrong or red flag-ish or just off about the fact that she continually brought up her insecurities and every single situation or conversation that they had. So I think this was her kind of making it clear, like, I'm insecure about this, so your feelings about this don't matter as much as mine because I'm coming into this relationship with this previous insecurity, this deep-rooted issue. I think that she used her insecurities a lot as a reason to not take full accountability for what she said or the things that she did. So it's made very, very clear that Danielle is not a very secure person. And she tells us what that's rooted from, where that stems from. She had a crush on a boy when she was, I think it was middle school, and she thought that he liked her back, and they were walking home and she heard her crush call her fat to somebody else. I'm not going to invalidate them because I think that that's very fair, but what I will say is that as a grown person at 28 years old, there comes a point where you need to kind of address those things head on and see how you can solve them instead of like eating you up. And I think that's what we saw her go through. And I did feel bad for her for having those insecurities and having those experiences that made her insecure in the first place, because she's a beautiful woman, but your external beauty has nothing to do with the way that you feel about yourself on the inside.
And that's on a period.
So she shares her insecurities with him. He does nothing to soothe her about them, which when I was watching it, I was like, okay, that's weird. But at the same time, I was like, okay, well, maybe he just doesn't know what to say or how to respond to this. But at the same time, it was kind of awkward for there to just be like silence as she's just listing off all the things that she doesn't like about herself. And he also then asks her to tell him more about her insecurities in terms of relationships. So he's like, I don't want to hear about what you're insecure about yourself anymore. Tell me what you're insecure about in relationships. And that to me was that was weird. I thought it was especially weird because it was like she gave all of her insecurities about everything first, and then after that he offered like a sliver. And it could have been that at the time he didn't really see himself as a very insecure person, but I also think that he was quite insecure. It just manifested itself in different ways than Danielle. So then he finds out that she has had trust issues.
I was dating a guy who every time he was like laying next to me in bed, he was scrolling through his phone and all I would see were these girls that were like, you know, like not me.
She has never been in a relationship with somebody who she completely trusts. Now for me, if I were Nick and I was hearing these things in the pods and I was hearing a girl tell me all these things, for me personally, I would have ran.
I know I ain't crazy.
Because this to me doesn't seem like someone who is ready for marriage, who is mentally prepared for marriage, who is ready to trust enough and be secure in our relationship or in herself enough to believe that things are going to work out for the best and go into it with like an optimistic point of view. I would have ran, but he didn't. He stayed, and well, it turned out how it turned out. So then in another conversation they have later on, she says that she has seen so many relationships and experienced so many relationships where things have to happen, like something has to happen. So she's always waiting for something bad to happen.
So I'm like, something's gonna, like, bad is gonna happen.
Now, why is Mr. Nick playing with his shirt while she's crying and spilling her emotions? Be for real.
No, girl. The foreshadowing is so awkward now that they are no longer together. And it wasn't one big bad thing that happened, but a series of like little bad things that happened throughout their short relationship. She then goes on to say that she doesn't deserve him, and he then says that he likes her strength to share her insecurities. So at this point, he's not seeing it as, oh, she's just a very insecure person. He's seeing it as, oh, she trusts me enough to talk about all these things with me, which is a different way of looking at things. Nick is the first to propose. Danielle says yes, and she is crying and like sobbing, and again talking about how she's not sure how this is gonna work.
Okay.
Nick is wiping at his eyes like he's crying, but there's not a single tear in sight, like not a single one.
Electric chair.
In the second episode, they finally meet, okay, finally. And it was very awkward. Like they both seemed excited a little bit, but they also both seemed awkward. I don't know, maybe it was just me, but he tells her how beautiful she is, how pretty she is. To me, it seemed like he was trying to soothe her insecurities and her worries, and I do think that he thought this as well. She mentions again how worried she was that he wouldn't think that she was cute or attractive.
Or, again, a fucking again.
Episode 3 and 4, we didn't really see that much of them because it was other couples, but they were on their Mexican vacation, and she finds out that Nick makes his own toothpaste and body wash, which is something. It's something special. But then in a cutscene, like in an interview scene with the producer, she says that she's going to swap out his toothpaste when he doesn't realize. This, to me, I thought this was really weird. Like, me personally, if someone told me, yeah, I make my own toothpaste and body wash, I'd be like, okay, like, that's cool. I'm not going to use it, but you go ahead, go off. This might be insignificant at this point, but to me, in the grand scheme of things, I think it's very telling about how Danielle operates. Like, she thinks that she can just make him do what she wants instead of just letting him be him. So in this episode, she also gets sick and then tells him that he has time to run. And he's like, see, I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. At this point, y'all have only been in person for like a day and a half, maybe 2 days at max. First of all, to ever tell someone that they can run in a relationship, that's kind of weird to me. And it seems like reverse psychology, where it's like, yeah, well, you can run. And then because they think that you think that they want to run, they're going to try even harder to show you that they don't actually want to run. So then the next episode, episode 5, Nick goes to meet all of the couples and Danielle is not feeling well, so she stays back in the hotel. She says she's feeling really, really sick. And they cut to a scene, I shouldn't laugh. They cut to a scene of her lying on the bathroom floor by the toilet while Nick is like out having fun. And I was like, producers did y'all dirty with this. This was so... It was unnecessarily shady. So Nick comes back and he's like, oh, I really missed you. Like, I couldn't wait to get back home to you. And she has a look on her face like, as if to say, like, she really doesn't believe him at all. And she's like,
Yeah, I mean, it looked like you were having fun.
What? That was a face crack moment for me because I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? So he's like,
Looked like?
Yeah, what do you think I was doing out there? I was bored.
You watched it?
Yeah.
and he's very shocked as well. He's like, what? And she's like, yeah. Girl, you spied on him from the room when you're supposed to be sick by the toilet throwing up?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Danielle then proceeds to say that she was feeling insecure about the fact that Nick was talking to other women at the party while all the women at the party are also engaged. And then she proceeds to tell him that
this stuff is going to cause big issues.
I was like, what do you mean by this kind of stuff? Him talking to women in the real world because women exist outside of you? These are just things that I felt in the first episode should have been very clear by the way she was talking and the way she was operating in the pods. Like, you could tell this was a very insecure person. So it was very evident that she's going to feel some type of way every time you do something that can make her feel more insecure than she already is. So then he raises his voice a little because he's getting frustrated and he asks, like, why is this going to cause a big issue? And I don't think that he should have raised his voice, but I also understand where he was coming from. Like, raising your voice is not going to help it. So then she proceeds to tell him she saw that happen. Then she got upset. She closed the doors, turned off the lights, and she went and sat and locked herself in the closet and cried for the 3 hours while he was at the party.
The woman was too stunned to speak.
And he's like, what? And then she says that if roles were reversed and he was the one that was sitting crying in the closet, she would change the way that she feels about being upset or being frustrated about the situation. So making it seem like he's wrong for not comforting her about why she was crying when she was crying for no reason.
What's not clicking?
And then she goes on to say,
I'm not saying that to like make you feel bad. I just want you to understand where I'm coming from.
and this is something she would continually say. She would say things that were rooted ultimately only in her insecurities, push that onto him, and then be like, oh, well, I'm not trying to make you feel bad, when that's clearly what she's trying to do. She's trying to make him feel bad. So then he would stop addressing the problematic things that she's saying and how she's acting. So they get into a fight, shockingly, and he calls her toxic and says that
You're being toxic. You're not making the active effort to stop the toxicity.
which she wasn't. Then Danielle again brings up her distrust of men, and she's always scared that they're going to find somebody else, find somebody better. She feels like she's always competing with every other person out there. And that has got to be an absolutely miserable way to live. And that is why you should get over these issues or be actively working on these issues before you enter into a serious relationship, let alone entering into a serious relationship on a reality TV show where you're also going to be criticized and perceived by the rest of the world. Like, this just does not seem like an ideal situation for her. Then in an interview after this whole fight and situation, Nick tells producers, like, if we had this argument in real life this early on in the relationship, it wouldn't have worked out. But because they met in the pods, somehow it's different. Like, sir, that is a sign to get out. If they're acting in a very toxic way, a way that you don't think you can handle, a way that you think is super unhealthy, there's no reason to stay in that. But I do think that there's a lot of pressure on the show to do the exact opposite. But this also shows that both Nick and Danielle were recognizing their incompatibility and their relationship problems and their problems as individuals from the start, but neither of them really did anything to fix it or improve it or work on it. They just kind of let it happen. Then they go to dinner and Danielle kind of asks him like what he's most worried about. And he says that sometimes he cannot see their fights coming, like it's a freight train out of nowhere. That reminded me of the things that we were talking about when it came to emotional abuse earlier, where it's like there's frequent outbursts. It's like she only asked him this question so she could talk about how she was feeling about the whole situation. When it's like, girl, you just could have talked about that. Like, you didn't need to ask him a question to not really care what his response was, only to talk about you. Then she says that she's very scared that he's going to think how she's been acting on the trip is how she's going to be for the rest of their lives. And it's just not like that.
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
She then says that she only had that outburst because
I just had a panic attack.
This I don't have much to say on that, because I do think that panic attacks and anxiety disorders, they can manifest themselves in different ways for everybody. So then she says that she's scared that he's going to judge her for how she was moving through and navigating her panic attack, and insists that he is judging her when he says that he's not judging her. He is just trying to sit back and understand where she's coming from. And I can say that is what it seemed like, but I agree with her. I do think that he was judging her. And then she says that the way that he responded to her in that moment and the way he's responding to her now only makes her worse. And he said that this is because when they tried to have a conversation about how she was feeling, then she just got more angry and more upset and more frustrated. So he just tried to be hands off of the situation and walk away so he wasn't also getting angry, getting frustrated. So it seems like he is making more of an effort to control his emotions and his outbursts, and she's just kind of letting it fly. So then the couples, they go back home and she brings up how her downfall is the way that she thinks about things or overthinks things. And he says that he likes that about her. And she's like, yeah, until you're the target of it. So our girl can be self-aware. She does know when things are going on and she does know when she's doing things wrong, but she actively chooses to not do anything about it. Like, I don't know. This seemed weird to me, but it was also the first moment of real clarity, seeing that she understands the way that she acts as a problem, but she still acts that way.
Allegedly.
So they go and they meet her family, and then after this, they immediately get into another fight.
Imagine how tired we are. Imagine how tired we are.
While they were at her family's house, Nick had some personal issues come up. So as soon as they were leaving her parents' house, as they got in the car, Danielle wanted to talk about how much her family loved him and whatever she wanted to talk about. And he instead kind of took it as an opportunity. Okay, we're away from your family. I can vent and I can talk about things that are going on that I didn't want to talk about in front of your family because I didn't want to ruin the moment. Like, I just wanted it to be about us meeting and having a good time. But this has really been weighing heavily on me, so I want to talk about it with my fiance now. And this was an issue for her. She felt like he was taking away from the moment and that he wasn't happy that her family liked him. And it's like, why would he not be happy about that? He then apologizes for bringing it up and ruining their day and says that he was selfish for bringing it up.
I know it was selfish to bring it up when we had just met your family. I'm very sorry.
And I personally disagree. I think that he had every right to bring it up when he did. And I do think that he had every right to talk about what was going on in his mind the same way Danielle wanted to talk about what was going on in her mind. She doesn't even acknowledge what he said or his apology. She just keeps going on. She's like, well,
That you're being fake.
That what was fake? Because he didn't immediately want to continue talking about her family after they had just spent hours with her family.
Oh, boo-hoo. Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
And then Nick hits her with the legendary...
Did you ever think the world doesn't revolve around you?
I was like, ooh. And she didn't take well to that at all. She was very upset by that. You think that it was a jab? 100% I think it was a jab. So then she accuses him of being narcissistic. So now we're just diagnosing people, apparently. Diagnosing everybody but ourselves. Okay. All right.
Bam!
So then she says,
I was happy for one fucking day. One day.
like, girl, if you were happy for one day, then y'all should not be together. Then he gets frustrated and he starts to yell again. So I don't really like the fact that he yells at her. I don't think that that's okay. But at the same time, he's valid in his frustrations. But I don't think that yelling is any way to handle this situation. So then, after everything that she did and said, she then walks away and says that she can't do this right now.
Child. Anyway, so
I do see where he's coming from, and I don't want to police his reaction, but I don't understand why he always just resorts to yelling at her when she's a sensitive person. So yelling at her is not going to get you guys anywhere. So then the next day, Danielle goes back to the apartment. I don't know where the heck she was. The scene just shows her walking in the apartment, putting down the bags, not saying anything to him as she walks in the house. So literally giving him the silent treatment, the cold shoulder. It's like, girl, are we 5? Like, this is what you're doing with the man you're supposed to marry? All right. So then he's like, hey, they start talking about the fight, and she's like,
I mean, I feel like we both said things that we probably shouldn't have.
Like, girl, how about you take accountability and responsibility for what you did? So then he's like, yeah, but you said I was a narcissist. And she goes, but you said the world revolves around me. And in my head, as I was watching the scene, I was like, why are we playing tit for tat right now? Just say I was wrong and I'm sorry and I shouldn't have said those things and I'll do better going forward and try and do better. Like, why are we... I just feel like on this show, they really need some therapy. So then he says that...
And this is why I don't like to just get into these intense arguments without having time to like reflect and like control what I'm going to say.
He seems like the type of person who, like he said, he needs a lot of time to kind of walk away, process, calm down, cool down, and then have a conversation about it, which is fine. But it also shows that he's more self-aware than Danielle. But at the same time, it's like, if you're self-aware and you know these things, then why aren't you doing them? So then he apologizes again for letting his issues bubble up and interrupt their day with her family, which he shouldn't have apologized for. And she, I don't recall her apologizing, but she says that she was upset because she was the reason that he was upset. So in episode 7, they finally are like going to each other's houses, and she goes to Nick's place and he shows her his home, which is very clean. It's very immaculate. She said it like it was a bad thing. I personally don't think it was a bad thing, but whatever. And he shows off his alphabetized DVD collection. And she says to him, I don't like that at all. Girl.
My God, who the hell cares?
And then he's like, yeah, like I get kind of frustrated if they get unalphabetized or if things are out of order, out of place. And she says, well, now I know how to piss you off. And then laughs, but he does not. I also did not. Had the roles been reversed and he had said this to her, she would have had a huge issue with it. So then they fight about where her rock band stuff is going to go in his house.
Okay.
This is what I'm saying when I just said they were just annoying to me. Like, who cares about the rock band stuff? Like, is it that serious? Go to Danielle's house and she talks about how wild her parties get and how her friends sometimes break things and they jump on the table and they dance and they break stuff. Like, it was normal. And he says that this is a sign of immaturity and that's not going to happen once they move into his house. And she's like, well, no one plans on breaking things.
Oh, Lord. Again.
And it's like she's not getting the point. So he eventually just says, I don't want to keep talking about this. And then he walks off. I think that this is kind of what he should have been doing the whole time. Like just letting her know, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I need a second. I need a break to go cool down. So then they go cake testing and they get into a fight again.
Have mercy. Today drained me.
So I guess the weekend before they filmed this scene, Danielle had gone out with her friends and she thinks that Nick had a problem with it. Nick asked her if every weekend was going to be like this after they get married. And this is when I tried to like look at him a little bit sideways because it seemed like a little bit of a smart-mouthed comment. It's clear what he means by this. Like, I want you to be at home with me or to go out with me or to, you know, but just don't go out by yourself while I'm at home type thing. His recollection of what happened was that they went out to dinner.
I said, well, today I started thinking like, you like to go out a lot. Like, when am I invited? Like, when are we doing that together?
But this is something he knew before they this was one of the very first things she had told him once they entered the pods, was that she likes to go out and drink with her friends. So it shouldn't be a shock that once y'all get together, she likes to go out and drink with her friends. And then he said, when do we have time for just us?
Well, I am confusion.
And I was like, it seems like you guys have been spending a lot of time with just you. So maybe that's part of the problem. But this whole thing just seemed toxic to me. Also problematic because, Nick, you knew who she was. You knew that she liked to go out with her friends. You knew that she liked to hang out with her friends before y'all got together. So then the next episode, Danielle lets him know, like, hey, I took a night to think about everything that you said, and I heard you, and you are my priority. I don't know if that's what his issue was, but he's just like, okay, thank you, blah, blah, blah. They kiss. They're like, we love each other. It's good for half a second, and then they get into another fight.
Ain't you tired?
Nick then fairly questions whether these types of arguments or these types of fights are ever going to end, because he says that he just can't continue to do this for the rest of his life, which I thought was super fair, was super valid, and I thought it was good that he was being upfront and honest about exactly what he was feeling, why he was feeling that way. Danielle then immediately, you could tell she just like tenses up, she freezes up, and she shuts down. She says,
So hearing you say that scares me.
and to me, it just became very clear at this point, we're basically all the way through the season, that Danielle should be able to say whatever she's feeling whenever that is. But when Nick is honest about how he's feeling, and he clearly explains why he's feeling that way and clearly ties it to something, which is something that Danielle does not do. She talks in this like roundabout way about issues and can't exactly pinpoint why she feels the way that she feels, but just she feels that way and it's a problem. This is where the next fight starts up. Oh! Danielle says that they're caught up in La La Land. And I was like, child, if this is what y'all think La La Land is, then y'all should not get married, because this has not been great at all from the start from what we've seen. So she then cries. She tells him that if I were you, I would want to leave me too. This to me seemed very emotionally manipulative, because you're not addressing how he's feeling. You're flipping it and you're making it about you, because now you're crying and you're trying to make him feel bad. And he says,
I'll tell you right now, the one thing that I need you to remember is that I love you, and I'm gonna love you at your worst.
Then all of a sudden, she's not crying anymore. That to me was where I was like, okay, this is very clearly manipulative. Like, you were crying 2 seconds ago, and now because he says exactly what you want to hear and validates you in the exact way that you need to be validated, you're not crying anymore.
Oh. All right.
Then in another scene, this to me, it also just shows how deep Danielle's trauma is. They were swimming in the pool like before the bachelor and bachelorette parties, and she tells him that he was being like very conservative and not very aggressive sexually in Mexico, and she was worried that it was going to be like that in their relationship forever. And he's like, we just met. Like, I don't know what we just met. I don't know what you expected from me. And I agreed with that. He didn't want to make you uncomfortable. He also wanted to make sure he got your consent for everything, as a good partner should do, and make sure that you were okay before he just did whatever to you. And she's like, I had never had anyone ask me before. And I thought that this was really sad. I'm not going to lie. I did think that this was really sad. To be a 28-year-old woman and none of them have ever really made sure to get your consent before you do anything sexually, that was really sad to me. In the end, they get married. Shortly after the couple celebrated their 1-year anniversary, in August of 2022, Danielle filed for divorce. Neither of them really spoke about it initially. So Nick was the first to speak up about the situation, and he took to Instagram in September of 2022 to say that the past few weeks have been challenging for me. Everyone perceives and experiences grief a different way when relationship ends, let alone the loss of a marriage in the public eye. He then said that he was working through his own mental and emotional challenges to overcome feelings of anxiety and depression. He was just staying true to himself and trying to find a way forward. He then also said that for his own mental health and healing, he had to create a boundary with Danielle to where he's not engaging with her anymore, which is a lie, because they would continue to go back and forth, and he doesn't want to be in any kind of position where he's having to defend himself, and yet he would do that anyways. And he said that he never planned to talk poorly about Danielle or anything like that. And in retaliation to Nick's comments in September, Danielle said on Instagram as well, do not let anyone, especially a partner, make you feel inadequate with your strengths and worse about your struggles. The fact that someone, she didn't straight up say that it was Nick, but obviously she's talking about Nick, is interacting with and amping up conversations that negatively talk about my mental health and pretending to be an advocate or care publicly is incredibly disappointing. You feel comfortable opening up about topics and events never discussed with friends or family just to have them used against you daily and now publicly for self-gain. I didn't think that his statement was really focused on her, to be honest with you. I don't think that he was making jabs at her by talking about anxiety and depression. I think he was just talking about how he felt about the divorce and the separation. But I also, I want to acknowledge, this is a reality TV show, and Instagram and social media, so we only see what they want us to see. It's carefully curated. So there may have been things going on behind the scenes with him belittling or diminishing her mental health. So in October of 2022, Danielle spoke out again and said that when they decided to separate, it was a mutual decision, even though she was the one that filed. She said that ultimately it came down to personality compatibility differences. They just were not compatible, which I think we all saw from the start. She also said that you can be in a relationship, truly love someone, and know that it's not right for you, especially when it's a lifelong partner. So then why did y'all get married? So then I guess she decided to kind of get ahead of the curve and decided that it was now her turn to get her narrative and all of those things out there before Nick got a chance to spin it a different way. So she went on the Do Me After Dark podcast and said that they both got caught up in a fairy tale and got married before they should have, which we know they should not have gotten married.
I want you to be so expeditiously, supercalifragically, expialidociously fucking for real now. Like, be fucking for real.
She said that the changes were subtle within their relationship, and she kept telling herself that they were just stressed and everything was going to revert back to who he was or the relationship she thought that it was. She said that she realized he wasn't necessarily someone she needed as a partner or someone in her life, and that they really weren't compatible, and a lot of that was in some pretty fundamental ways. So then why did y'all get married? And she said that she felt herself slowly changing to fit an idea of who someone else wanted her to be. On November 21st, 2022, Danielle spoke to E! News and said that Nick has taken zero accountability in the role that he played in the downfall and the breakup of their relationship. She said in every single interview that she did or every public statement that she made, she tried to make it clear that it takes two to make or break a relationship. She did not want to put the blame onto him, and she did not want to take it on her 100% either. She, however, says and claims that Nick did the exact opposite, that he put all of the blame onto her, and she claims that that was something that he did throughout the entirety of their relationship. Which I can see that. I can definitely see that, but I can also see that not being true just based off of what we saw, so I could see it going both ways. She made it very clear that she was the one who filed for divorce because he did not want to break up. He did not want to end the relationship. She claims that after she told him, he gave her the silent treatment, and that was when he says that he implemented that boundary to not talk to her anymore for his own healing.
What the hell is even that?
She says that he is going on these varying press tours and going around and telling his side of the story while giving her the cold shoulder as a way to punish her for ending their relationship and filing for divorce. She also said that before they separated, they were in couples therapy for a pretty long time, but ultimately stopped going when Nick said he didn't want to attend anymore, as Nick was extremely controlling and she let him be. She says that everything was his decision, no matter how much she had an opinion or input in things, it ultimately came up to him and him alone. Whatever she wanted was never really taken into consideration. Then, in retaliation to Danielle's statement,
oh Lord, again, nothing new, nothing changed, same old shit.
Nick went to People magazine and said that it's hurtful to hear these comments. It's disappointing that Danielle chooses to make false claims and defamatory comments about me and our relationship. He then says that everything Danielle has said was either untrue or, at best case scenario, lacking context. This statement is what really made me side-eye him. I don't think there's anything that Danielle said where context could have been added to it and it made him or their relationship seem better than it was. He said in good conscience he won't share private matters or his experience in their relationship publicly because it is not in his character to disparage people. Nick also spoke to US Weekly and said that he wasn't getting the partnership he needed to be successful and to move forward with their relationship.
Alrighty then.
So based on everything that we saw on the show and just things that have gone on after, I really am not sure if there was emotional abuse going on here. I definitely think that Danielle emotionally manipulated Nick for a long time, but I also do see how he was at times controlling in their relationship. I'm still not sure if it was just a toxic relationship, but make sure to let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to check out this other playlist I have full of reality TV breakdowns. I do this regularly on the channel. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification so you are aware of the next time that we upload. And the next reality TV breakdown will be focused on Taylor Hale of Big Brother 24. We love her.